line in particular in the Virginia Tech game versus Apple's State? Or was there more?
I think a little bit like a lot of things, the results of one week don't have a whole lot to do with the outcome of the next week. It's two different opponents. You prepare a little bit differently. Obviously the thing that was disappointing was the start we got off to, but the thing that was positive was the maturity that we showed, the adjustments that our coaching staff and our players made, and how we played in the from the beginning of the second, from the fumble recovery, by Micah, the first fumble recovery by Micah, through the last drive of the game. I thought we played very, very well. So, but I'm happy. Obviously we talked about more disruption. That was one of the big goals last week, and to get 3 sacks, get 5 fumble recoveries, and to have 8 tackles for loss, that was very positive.
The nose for the ball that Mike has shown so far the first 2 weeks, is that just something that comes natural? Is it something y'all saw in the preseason, or just?
I think in the spring when we talked about it, I think he's really, he doesn't get too high and too low, and you guys have all talked to him. And I like steady players, and he's been very, very steady. He and TK have both been, pretty steady back there and done a good job. And that's really what separated them at the safety position. They're composed, they communicate well, and I think the best is yet to come from Micah.
Has he exceeded expectations so far, or was this kind of what you were thinking you were going to be getting from that?
Like I said, I mean, he was highly recruited out of high school. We recruited him when we were at Vanderbilt and then at Penn State, and when he came here, and I've known his family for a long time, and to watch him have success, this is the expectation I had for him as a person and as a player. And again, keep in mind, those are his first 2 starts, and I feel like his confidence is growing. And I've said this, and I'm sure someone looked it up again. I don't think they keep an NCAA stat for most fumble recoveries in a game, but I've never heard of an individual having 3 fumble recoveries in a game. So that's to finish the App State game off like he did with a great pass breakup and to have 3 fumble recoveries and be the SEC Player of the Week. That's great. And you know what he did on Monday and Tuesday? He came out and practiced as humbly as any player on the team.
Y'all talked about, you talked about the recruiting process. He played a lot of running back in high school. Yep. What made you think he was going to be a defensive guy at the next level?
That's what he wanted to play. And, a lot of times in high school, he was a great returner and great running back. Your best high school athletes are either your quarterbacks or your running backs. So he had the skill set, the size, the speed, the quickness, the football IQ to be really good at this level at that position.
Bob, after the first quarter, it looks like you're...
I was waiting for someone to jump in.
After the first quarter, your defensive line kind of seemed to take over there for about 2+ quarters. Is that maybe more what you were expecting to see from them in terms of being disruptive and kind of controlling the line of scrimmage?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I thought they did a good job. I thought we were on our heels a little bit in the first quarter, and it's funny, we showed the plays, and there's probably 120 yards of offense that we left on the field with mistakes that we made both in the back end and missed assignments. The touchdown pass to the fullback, we didn't cover the guy. We did a poor job on that. The long run, we misfit at the safety position. And then, there was a third down where we didn't cover a slot receiver. Things that you just don't anticipate happening, and by players that we wouldn't expect that to happen to. And then, and then they regrouped, and to the players' credit, I thought, like you said, once we got the momentum back, boy, I thought we played pretty good in the second and third and most of the fourth quarter.
Coach, you mentioned being disruptive up front. Kendal Vickers is a guy who last year was solid, but didn't have a lot of TFLs or sacks. And he's already doubled his TFL total this year. What's kind of been the key to? Yeah, he had 1.5 last year, if I'm not mistaken.
It wasn't hard to double that then.
Word trick, I guess.
I love.
But what have you seen from him to make him kind of turn
again?
Into explosive?
The guys that I've always had success with are guys that are steady, and he's consistent in his approach. He's not up here one day, down here one day, over here one day. Comes to practice every day. He practices hard. He's got a positive attitude. He's got a tremendous work ethic. He provides great leadership for the younger players, and that's what he and Danny have done. And Corey came through with I think a fumble recovery and a sack the other day, and Kendall's had a couple, 3 tackles for loss now, and we caused the fumble on the last fumble for him too on a screen pass. His effort's just been outstanding, and I think you can win with those guys. You don't need, to me, those are the type of guys that you win with all the time. Guys who are consistent in their play, guys whose approach is solid all the time, guys who play with passion and toughness and understand their role within the team. And we've got a lot of guys who are doing that, and we need more guys to continue to do that.
How much did Shai add to the equation of just getting him back? How much more dynamic?
He was our swarm points winner at the defensive line, and obviously the effort that he made beating the running back and the quarterback to the fumble on that one play was outstanding. And just for his personal success, to see him come back from a bad injury like that and to get into the game and play well, that was very, very positive. And now I think we all feel a little bit better about the thought of, McKenzie, Obi, Vickers, and Shy inside, and then the ability on certain down and distances to play a Kongbo or a Barnett or a Mixon inside. So those are all of a sudden it looks a little bit better than it did maybe a few weeks ago.
Bob, just the
How's
impact of losing DK, and just kind of, how has Colton looked this week in practice, and how you guys kind of plan to move forward, the next week or 2 weeks there?
Yeah, it's, again, I say this all the time, no individual is bigger than the team. If it was, you wouldn't have much of a team. So, our job is to prepare the players that are ready to go this week, and right now, because of the injury, Colton's our number one linebacker. He prepares as hard as anybody. He's done that through the course of spring. He's done that through the course of the summer. This wasn't handed to him by any means. He's earned this opportunity, and he's going to play very well.
Coach said a little bit about just the ability to shift Reed's Maven over, because those two spots are interchangeable. Is that something? Has that always been a kind of a dynamic in your defense, or?
I think the two linebackers in a 4-2-5 scheme are somewhat interchangeable. We're going to practice Colton. We're going to practice Gavin Bryant. We're going to practice Dylan Bates. Daniel Patulli continues to improve. Jalen Cortez and Corte are playing the will linebacker, and just because it's the Ohio week doesn't mean we'll not reassess it every single week. So for Ohio, we're prepared to move forward with Colton playing Mike and Jalen playing Will and go from there.
Speaking of Ohio, they're